Hey, ladies and gents, and welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 247. I'm your host, Jerrad Wyche. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Dominic Orlando.
It's Keeley season. E3.
Key 3.
Keeley. What did we call it last week?
Key 3 Lee.
E Keeley. Okay.
Yeah, so, big show. We didn't record last week because a bunch of things were happening with all the events. We figured we'd wait till this week and cover, our favorite announcements from this past week. We had some big events. We had the Summer Game Fest showcase. We had the Xbox Bethesda showcase. We had the PlayStation State of Play. We had Future Game Show. We had a bunch of stuff. So the way we're going to work it out is we're going to start by grading the big three shows, which are Summer Game Showcase, Xbox Bethesda Showcase, and PlayStation State of Play. And then we're going to go over our favorite announcements, reveals, and games from the show. And then we're going to go over our predictions, which some of them, based on the circumstances of the events, which we'll get into now that we're going to be grading them, kind of left us out to dry a little bit. I guess overall, just no show specifically, Dom. This last week, are you thumbs up, thumbs down, or kind of in between?
For everything?
Yeah, just do you think was there enough there for you personally that you're like, oh yeah, this is a thumbs up. I'm looking forward to games for the next year or so.
Well, yes.
Okay.
I'm that felt like two different questions. Yes, I'm definitely looking forward to games for the next year-ish. But we can't. I don't think we can judge this past week without the context of what E3 week used to be like in recent or in past years. So compared to a lot of the past years when there's a lot more big publishers doing conferences, it just kind of doesn't really compare. But
it's a victim of circumstance, right? Because
exactly.
of like with COVID and everything, it just seems like this is the off year. This is the bye week if we're talking in terms of sports.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll get into with the grading, but yeah, I guess compared to other E3s, it definitely didn't feel as grand.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think there was enough to justify it at least.
Oh,
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start off with, I'm going to go in order of my lowest grade to the highest grade, and then you can bounce off of me and tell me where you grade. I'm going by letter grades here. So Summer Game Fest, I give it a C. So I start off with the expectations were set accordingly. Jeff Keighley came out and said, hey, we're mostly going to be talking about games that are already announced. Even during the beginning of the show, he was like, you're not going to get everything you want. Just understand that. But with that, even though expectations were set accordingly, I think if they weren't set accordingly, this would have probably been a D for me or maybe even an F. But because they were set accordingly, that bumps it up quite a bit. But the reason I knock it so much is that there weren't any big surprises. Obviously, The Last of Us Part 1 leaking before the show by PlayStation didn't help them at all. But even then, I think if that game wasn't leaked, sure, it would have been a neat surprise, but I don't think it would have saved the show, And speaking of that, the other thing that kind of knocked it down a bit, outside of not having any big surprises, is that as cool as, and we'll get to it later probably with one of us, as cool as the Naughty Dog block of announcements were, talking about, the remake and the show and what's coming next from Naughty Dog and even their multiplayer game, it still ended weird, right? It was like we talk for like 15 minutes and then it's over, and there was no one more announcement or nothing after that. They didn't end with the trailer, so it kind of ended on a dud as well. So I want to give it a C. I don't want to be too harsh on it because I do think for the circumstances of what was happening, it was a good show. But when compared to what Jeff Keighley has done in the past, I don't think it was great. And the only reason for me that it gets a passing grade of a C is because he set the expectations. But just because you set the expectations doesn't mean it can't still be disappointing. So that's
otherwise
Summer Game Fest showcase for me.
Because otherwise, I could tell you, well, come watch the Dom's game showcase. There won't be any games, and I wouldn't disappoint you. My expectations were accurate, but you'd be like, well, why the hell am I here?
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Summer Game Fest? Are you closer to me? Where would you grade it?
Probably about the same. Maybe closer to a C+, just because after further inspection, there were some cool smaller games in the middle
For sure.
that I actually was really into, and as I went back and watched some demos for some things, and some further gameplay and some of that stuff, I was like, oh wow, there's actually some stuff in here that was really cool. But yeah, there definitely, not only was there nothing, real big surprises, but the way that the whole thing just feels awkward. Like the way it's edited doesn't seem like it's um made for like a shocking reveal. It's just sort of like, oh, here's Neil Druckmann, kind of he's just standing there with, and so I guess we're gonna hear about The Last of Us, which again, even if we didn't know about, 'cause it got, if it didn't get leaked ahead of time, it still wasn't like a cool moment. It was just there they are, and then the announcements they had themselves. I could talk a lot more about that, but it was to me mostly kind of disappointing. But yeah, like you said too, they, Jeff set the expectations ahead of time, and so that makes it all easier to swallow. I don't know. I feel a tiny bit like maybe he should have said that a week in advance or 2 weeks in advance, instead of what I feel like maybe he was just trying to capitalize on the marketing and the build up, but then last minute, like, well, but just, chill out a little bit, you guys. But everyone's already been getting hyped and they're going to watch it anyway. It's, I don't know. It feels odd. Maybe say that earlier, but it was an okay show.
Yeah. I agree with you on all those points. Next up, we got the Xbox Bethesda showcase, and I gave this one a B+. I thought it was really good. The pacing was great. Awesome variety of games. Game Pass is insane. Obviously, like almost every game in that showcase was coming to Game Pass on day one. So much gameplay, right? That was a big criticism Xbox has had. Was like, you guys show off dope games and there is some gameplay, but we want more gameplay. We don't think you guys show enough gameplay, and they took that in, and a majority of that show was gameplay, which was pretty awesome. For me, the one knock it gets from being an A is the lack of hard dates. A lot of it, even if it was like we would get like November 2022 or October 2022, which is fine, but even then it's like, well, if you're giving us a month, why not just give us like a date? Like, it's so weird.
You might as well. They have it picked out internally, almost certainly, if they have that month, right? Why not?
Exactly. As dope as Starfield was, which we'll get to obviously later, I do think they suffered the same thing as Summer Game Fest, where there wasn't any like one last thing, which I think would have really popped as well. But overall, it's still a great show. Like, I gave it a B+. I think it was really good. Just a few minor knocks that would knock it down from that A tier. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Plenty of stuff. For me, in terms of the highest percentage of games I'm interested in from a showcase, this one was probably it. I think also because it showed so much gameplay as well. So, yeah, for me, the Xbox Bethesda showcase, B+.
Yeah, I'm probably like a B. This was a really good show. But it's the same thing. Like, their past couple before this were even better, right? So they set the bar too high for themselves, which, had Redfall and Starfield not been delayed and they were able to, well, we already had a Starfield date, but, had they been able to give a Redfall date of like, September or something, or October or something, that would have bolstered it even more, because you can kind of feel where that was missing. They were counting on having, that the Redfall date announcement probably at this show, which would have like gave it a little more splash, because otherwise, yeah, there wasn't too much that was like big surprises in this one either. What they did show like was really, really good, ton of gameplay, like you said. Although I will give them Persona was kind of a cool surprise, and
and Kojima. I mean, we knew about it because we followed
yeah.
leaks and stuff, but Kojima was a pretty big surprise too.
That's a good point, and that's a weird one, because like, all right, that's cool. Who knows what the heck this is going to be using xCloud in some way, but it's cool for them to be able to show that off. They're like, yeah, guess who's working with us, you guys?
Yeah, he's turned to the dark side, which is a pretty big thing in and of itself. Him not being on a Sony stage, right, and being with Xbox is kind of wild. I think the biggest surprises of the show were the structure, in that they came out and said, we're only talking about games that are releasing in the next 12 months, which is huge, and we're showing a bunch of gameplay. I think those two things are the biggest surprises of the show. But yeah, pretty good show. And then PlayStation State of Play is my highest graded. I have it as an A. They showed off the RE4 remake. They showed off Final Fantasy 16 gameplay. They showed off Street Fighter 6. I mean, all three of those games I'm not necessarily super interested in, but them having those reveals, that's what E3 is all about. They showed off the Callisto Protocol for the first time. They gave us a stray release date and showed off extended gameplay for that. They announced Spider-Man coming to PC. They showed off the Horizon VR game for PSVR 2. It was a lot of good stuff. Once again, I don't think there was anything crazy shocking. I think you could make an argument for RE4 Remake even then, but obviously with the rumors and stuff. But overall, it was a really well-paced show. They didn't spend too much time on VR. They got that out of the way at the top of the show. And they also set expectations accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
But in that same breath, they delivered a lot of surprises. So for me, I think it's a solid A. Despite me not maybe being interested in everything they showed, I just think for the number of not surprise, but reveals they had was really solid. Which going into this, viewer told me, "Hey, Jared, do you think the state of play is going to be the overall best constructed thing this week?" I would probably said probably not. It would probably be good, but I don't know if it could contend.
Yeah.
And it ended up being the best one. So
Yeah, I'm a little lower on it. I'm probably more like a B.
okay.
There was just because Resident Evil 4 is really cool. That's obviously like important. I'm pretty sure they've gotten like every Resident Evil, reveal the past like 4 games or something at Sony showcases. So it's kind of I feel like a more expected, and obviously we knew that game existed and was coming and all that kind of stuff. But we get a date, which is cool. But maybe I would be closer to an A had they kept The Last of Us in their showcase instead of putting
That's
that
valid,
on
yeah.
Summer Game Fest, and if it was priced appropriately and packaged appropriately. We can get into more of that at some point, but yeah, I think not, even though like they did set expectations accordingly. Again, I still think that's not having like a really good first party hit kind of pulls it down just a little bit to make it, B is good, B is great even, right? Like 80% or whatever. So it's still great, a lot like I think Microsoft or Xbox had more to show and more I was interested in too. But Sony had like, I don't know, maybe the couple bigger titles,
The more
that I'm
marquee
similar.
stuff.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 16, which we talked about. Like, I'm not super impressed with it myself either, but that feels like a big deal. Resident Evil is a big deal.
Street Fighter 6, which is crazy that
Yep.
it was revealed by PlayStation, but this one's coming to Xbox now, which is huge for that game because Street Fighter 5 was PlayStation exclusive, and it kind of hurt the community.
Yeah, so, or even imagine if they had some of the Final Fantasy stuff that got announced today back in the Sony State of Play. That could have been something that really elevated it too. Like, that remake part 2 in PlayStation only, like, that would have been like knock your socks off. Like, Sony, that would have been like a Sony E3 from 2016, 17, or 18, like some of those years when they were really great. But that's why I still say it was great, but still just a B. So really pretty good show.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, if you go to for Xbox, to me, it's like a well-reviewed buffet where you got to go. There's a little bit of everything. You got to try everything out. They might not be the super like highest quality, like you're not getting like elite level stuff, but you're probably gonna enjoy everything that's there. Whereas the PlayStation State of Play was more like a fancy restaurant where you take a chance on ordering the food, and B, it's going to be smaller portions, but it's probably going to be higher quality. You know what I mean? So you're like, oh, how do you weigh that? Are you actually having a better experience at that place? Or are you having a worse experience in comparison to the buffet? So, but yeah, I think overall none of them were bad.
Yeah.
But definitely not as high on them as we've been in previous years. Now let's talk about our favorite announcements, reveals, and games. So the way it's going to work is I told Dom, hey, we're going to have 3 categories: Everywhere Else, Summer Games Fest, and the Xbox Bethesda Showcase. Write down up to 5 of your favorite things. So you could have only brought 1 for each of them, but no more maximum than 5. I guess off the top, I'm going to say what my numbers are, and then we can go to your numbers too. So I only have 1 for Everywhere Else. And the only reason I did that is because I almost maxed out the other 2. So I have 4 for Summer Game Fest, and I have 5 for Xbox. So I figured I'd pick out and pluck the one Everywhere Else announcement that I was the highest on, just so I can focus solely on that. What about you?
I got about 5 for everything. So
okay, awesome. So let's start with your Everywhere Else, since you have more than me.
So I mean, some of these we already talked about, since outside of Xbox and outside of Summer Game Fest, some of the Sony stuff we just talked about. Like I'm pretty excited for Resident Evil 4. That's like 2. The remake of 2 was really great. 3 was a little bit less so, but still good. 7 and 8 I really liked recently as well. So looking back to the last time I played 4 was, I don't know, middle school, and I love the shit out of that game. So I'm super excited for that one to finally get remade. So that to me was pretty cool. I added Callisto Protocol as well because I just talked about loving Resident Evil, so was a big Dead Space fan too. So I'm super excited for Callisto Protocol as well. Yeah, and then there's one actually.
So I have
Stray.
Callisto too, but that's for Summer Game Fest.
Yeah.
Specifically because of what we saw there as opposed to what we saw at the Sony thing. But sorry, Stray.
Yeah, good point. Because I was at both, but then Stray was another one that from Sony's where I'm actually a dog person, but I like cats enough, and I don't know. I think it's a cool idea to have a game where you play as a cat. I had questions early on of like, how deep can the gameplay be, or what's it going to be like? And I think it just the style that it's going for is really cool. And then I do like, as opposed to some other stuff Sony has decided lately with their pricing and subscriptions and stuff like that. I do like that this is going to be a part of PlayStation Premium or Extra, whatever tier they put this in. So they're taking the tiniest bit of the Xbox approach and getting a game on release into one of their subscription services. Which I guess they started to do that a little bit with like Bug Snacks and some other smaller titles, but this is the first one that I don't know, for me hit. So I'm pretty pumped about that too. So I look forward to Stray. And
so speaking of the PlayStation Plus thing, I was watching somebody stream it, and the craziest thing, have you learned about this whole cloud save thing?
No, what is it?
So, say for instance, you got the service and you wanted to play God of War through the service. Like, say you didn't own it for some reason, or you just wanted to, you know what I mean? And you go and load it up and you want to get your save, and you're like, well, I uploaded my God of War save to the cloud. I should be able to pull it down. No, it's actually, you have to have a specific, you have to upload it again to a different cloud server for PlayStation Plus.
That's weird.
Yeah, instead of it just pulling from the cloud naturally, it's a separate thing then you have to go and transfer it to. Very odd. I mean, we've talked about the cloud technology on PlayStation, how it's not as seamless on Xbox where it just works, right? We've talked about our experiences of playing Halo on the PC and hey, there's my file from like 8 years ago or whatever. Yeah, just very odd stuff, but
it feels like similar to how they had problems with changing PSN names for so long. Where
oh yeah,
I wonder if it's here. It's like they made some bad design choices, earlier on with like the way the save files are formatted between PS4 and PS5 versions and weird and how they move from the cloud. And I don't know. It seems like they've found another way to handcuff themselves into like bad user experience with some of this stuff.
I wonder if, and this is just me assuming, and I don't have the information, I could totally be wrong, but I wonder if the core cloud stuff is Gaikai, but now that they're working with Microsoft with Azure, I wonder if this stuff is all Azure, and maybe that doesn't communicate with each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be something like that, where they're on separate clouds and platforms. Either way, it's silly that some of that stuff doesn't work better when it does in other places. Oh well.
So I think you've gone through 4 of them, right? You had Resident Evil 4, you had Callisto Protocol, Stray. What am I missing?
So,
or was that 3?
Yeah, that was 3, and I'll stop there because 1 I think was actually part of. Actually, no, I don't know where this was shown at, but it was one of those I think other ones. Cult of the Lamb.
That was at the Devolver Digital Showcase.
Okay, it was Devolver, so it wasn't Summer Game Fest. I didn't think so. Yeah, this game looks so cool, and I watched some gameplay of it. I didn't see it get announced. I didn't watch that Devolver Showcase, but this game looks really cool. Really unique idea. The art style, but as well as just the way it's like 2D, but it's almost like Animal Crossing, where like the world is round and you can walk. I don't know how to explain it, but if you see the gameplay for it, it'll make more sense.
It's like gyroscopic, I think is the term for it, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it just looks really cool, and the gameplay I watched was, I don't know, I was pretty impressed, and I like its vibe and everything it's doing, so that was a cool one for me.
I think that's coming to Game Pass too. I mean, at this point, what isn't really? But yeah, I don't have that one listed, but that game did catch my eye too. I think when it was originally announced last year at Devolver Showcase, I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I think it was supposed to come out between last year and this year, and then obviously with COVID and everything.
I don't even know it. Brand new to me.
Every trailer is brand new to somebody. So, my one everywhere else, this was also at the Devolver Digital Showcase, the Plucky Squire.
Oh yeah.
This game is one of the most impressive looking games I saw all week. This is an action adventure game where you transition between 2D and 3D gaming experiences, very reminiscent of like Link Between Worlds or even Mario Odyssey. Um, Incredible art style. Like the trailer starts and you're playing a top-down indie game on the pages of a children's book, and then he hops out and it's like you're in a Toy Story movie. It's really cool. It looks like nothing I've seen before. It really caught my eye, and I'm super excited for it. It's supposed to be coming out next year. Um, can't wait.
That one looks sick as well. So many games.
Yeah, so good. Next up, we'll start with Summer Game Fest. We'll go back and forth on this one since you have, what, 5 and I have 4, right?
Yeah. Actually, I wrote down I think even like 6 or 7, but I'm gonna curate it a little as we go here.
And if we we'll go back and forth, but if we have the same thing, then we can just both talk about it. So I'm gonna start off with Callisto Protocol because you had already mentioned it earlier. The difference between this and the state of play is we saw raw gameplay, which I really liked. Not only did we get a sense of some of the narrative storytelling with the holograms where it led to an actual dead body, which I thought was a cool, nice reveal. We saw the severing of limbs, which looked really good. Obviously, these are from the creators of Dead Space. But the detail in the severing was really good. Like you could see like bones jutting out of the side and everything.
I'm like, if someone were to like edit the sentences that you've just spoke and put it in a different context, it would look really bad.
yeah, out of context, I'd sound like I'm a serial killer or something. Really cool dodge mechanic, which I liked. I didn't know was in this game. There was a stomp mechanic as well that looked straight out of Dead Space, which isn't surprising. The coolest thing, this also out of context and it sounds awful, some of the most brutal deaths. Like the trailer ends with him getting caught in like a grinder or something, and it just shreds his body apart. I love the gun that they use, the grip gun I think it was called, where you can kind of grab enemies and throw them at stuff, and they can get destroyed by fans and moving objects. This just looks dope. Obviously at the end of June, we're going to be going over our 5 most anticipated and compare those to what they were before all of this happened. And spoiler alert, Callisto Protocol might be at the top of the list, but it's definitely going to be in there. I think this is one of the best showing games all this week. That we may have saw it numerous times, but every time there was a little bit something more to grab our interest, and I'm super excited. I cannot wait for this game.
Yeah, I know. Same here, man. Oof. Yeah, always with like that felt very Dead Space too, with the part of Dead Space where all the weapons were really unique and creative. It felt like the same thing here with that kind of push gun thing was pretty cool.
I think this is even more survival horror than Dead Space, though. Like, especially some of the scenes where you see him walking and he passes by like a corpse attached to the wall and it like blinks and looks at him. Like some of that stuff, and maybe I'm just not remembering Dead Space as fondly. And maybe it's just that technology's gotten better, so the visual fidelity is making it even creepier. But I'm glad to see this return to, horror roots. So can't wait. What's your first one?
I'm gonna throw one out that it was just really weird, but as I watched more gameplay, I'm like, this is cool as hell. Called Metal Hellsinger.
Oh yeah.
It feels like very much taking a lot from the recent Doom games, but more emphasis on the music. It's more like a rhythm game, where like as you're really first person, really fast, going through this hell type world and just killing demons, like melee attacks and guns. And if you do it like to the beat, like if each bullet or each slash, is to the beat, you kind of like get certain combos chained and start powering up and all that sort of stuff. And then as you do it too, like to the beat, the music starts to kick in more. And I don't know, it's really like mesmerizing. I was just watching someone play, and there's a demo too, so I downloaded the demo. I haven't touched it yet, but I look forward to that because it looks like it doesn't look visually as good as Doom. It feels like a tiny bit lower budget, and I think it's even like not a full price game either. But this was a really cool twist on the Doom games, and I don't know. I thought it looks really
well. The
like
fact that they hired all of those like talented vocalists to make original music for it is super sick.
Yeah.
And yeah, to your point, something I didn't notice is the better your combos are, the more layered the song becomes.
Right.
So it starts out very simple, and then it becomes more and more layered until when you're like at maximum combo, that's when the vocalist comes in and starts singing, and you start just getting, oh, it looks so cool. Yeah. You want to go next? Or you want me to go?
Let's see.
Actually, you know, I got a thread here. You talked about Doom. They announced it by saying Mick Gordon is composing this game, and if you're not familiar with Mick Gordon, he's the one who did all of the music for Doom, Doom Eternal, and the Wolfenstein games. Obviously, seems like id Software and him had a falling out recently after Wolfenstein 2. We had that in the news, obviously, of them like not maybe working together again. But obviously, he's super talented. He's from Australia. Routine is the game that he was unveiled with, and that's
on my list too.
First-person sci-fi horror game. So I didn't know this, but everyone's like, "Oh wow, Routine popped up again." I was like, "Oh, this is like a re-reveal." This game was originally revealed in 2012, Dom, and then it disappeared. Development turmoil, all that stuff, and now it's back with a new publisher, and it looks really dope. I think that's one thing where maybe some people were lower on the Summer Game Fest showcase if they weren't into sci-fi horror, because that was definitely the genre of the show. There was maybe like 4 or 5 games. I doubt either of us will talk about the one with Troy Baker and the voice actor that did Arthur Morgan in Red Dead 2. His name's escaping me.
I don't remember either.
But they announced a game called Fort Solace, where they just talked about the game. We didn't really see too much of it, but that was also another sci-fi horror game. Routine looks cool. It's creepy. I think it has parts of Five Nights at Freddy's in a good way. I know whenever anybody brings up that game, people are like, that weird kid game. But the robots are very creepy. They have weird mouths. This to me seems more like a true survival stealth horror game where you kind of maybe want to avoid a lot of the stuff you come across, as opposed to Callisto Protocol where you have a gun and you're probably going to be fighting them. Though this one, you have a gun, but it's unclear what the gun does. It looks more like a stapler or like a analyzer than an actual like firearm.
Yeah, I was thinking it looked almost like a camera or something.
Yeah, true. Ooh, that'd be creepy if like you aim it at things and they stop moving, but the moment you move it away, they can move. That'd be pretty creepy. But this game looks cool. I think the visual fidelity was surprising. There's a part where you're walking down these broken escalators and like the light breaks and hits the wall, and it's just so good. It caught me by surprise. I'm super excited for it. You said it's on your list too, so what caught your eye about Routine?
The vibe of it was just is quiet. There wasn't like ominous music. It was just quiet, and then you hear that light break or whatever, and then it's just like, oh. But then the mood it set was just so, it's just so scary, and like just by like there's just nothing, and visually it looked so incredible. Like probably one of the best looking bits of gameplay you'll ever see visually. But I don't know, the way the lighting, I don't know, I just thought it just looked really, really fancy. That's all I can say. But yeah, same thing as a bunch of the other games I've talked about. Like I like horror, man. Like scare the shit out of me, and I'm a fan. Apparently, that sounds weird, but
I totally wouldn't be worried if this was a smaller scope game too, where it's like maybe a 3 to 4 hour experience, and maybe it's not a full price game, because I'd be down for that as well. Just like you said, or as the kids say on TikTok these days, the vibes were immaculate, just from the beginning to the end. Which is weird that they started by promoting Mick Gordon, because to your point, it was very quiet and somber. It wasn't like action packed, which you'd expect him being attached to for it to be, and it wasn't that. So maybe his experience with sound design in general is why they asked him to be a part of it. Maybe just not the high tempo stuff. Yeah. What's your next one?
Next, I'll bring up. We saw Cuphead. The delicious last course, which we've seen a little bit before. I don't even remember when. It's been announced for a long time, but now it's coming up. It's really close, and I've been watching the Cuphead show on Netflix recently, which is a goofy, fun show. But yeah, it was cool to see a little bit of gameplay from this, and it's right around the corner now, and it's $8. I can't get over that. That's really cheap, and
that's crazy.
I don't expect it to be, this giant expansion or anything, but I feel like it's going to be, I don't know, another little island, and like even if it's only like 5 more bosses or something, like that's more than worth it. I don't know, I'm really excited for Cuphead DLC. So it didn't like necessarily do anything new to blow me out of the water of what they showed. It was no surprises really, except it's coming up, and I'm getting pumped for it.
It's like, yeah, I'm going to play that. Not necessarily anything shocking. Yeah. The level of animation and that game is just so gorgeous. I need to get around to the show. They recently announced the season 2 coming, which is awesome. So next, I guess I'll do this one. It's I'm gathering them all together. I'm gonna say The Last of Us slash Naughty Dog block. I think individually, none of these announcements maybe would have done it for me fully, but pairing them all together, I think obviously it was the core pillar of the Summer Game Showcase, despite one of the announcements being leaked by PlayStation themselves, which is so funny. And the number of times Neil Druckmann kind of poked fun at that was really funny. So I'm gonna go over the 4 announcements real quick, and then we can talk about them because I don't know if it's on your list or not, but at least I know you wanted to talk about some aspects of it. So we had Neil Druckmann at the end teasing his next project that it was in the works. He jabbed, "Hey, if PlayStation wants to leak that too, you might find out what I'm working on."
Yeah.
Which is good. We assumed he was working on something, but it's good to have that confirmation. And the reason it led to that is because the other 2 projects they announced aren't being led by him. First up is Factions, which might not have that name anymore. What they revealed is that it's as big as their other games now. It's set in San Francisco, has its own unique cast of characters, going to have unique storytelling that you're used to from Naughty Dog, and that we'll see more from it next year. They also showed off a first look at Joel and Ellie in the show for HBO, which looked really awesome. Neil Druckmann said he directed an episode of the show, and they also revealed that Troy and Ash, who played Joel and Ellie in the video game, are in the show, not as like slight cameos like Nolan North was in the Uncharted movie, but they're actually characters. They haven't revealed them yet. And then lastly, the one that was spoiled was The Last of Us Part 1, which is the remake. It's coming out September 2nd for $70. Comparisons are interesting. I know this is something you want to talk about specifically, and then maybe if you want to touch on any of the other 3 announcements.
Yeah. So the show, that's cool to get an update on that. And really to emphasize that how much Neil has been involved, right? I think that's where some shows based on video games maybe lose it a little bit. The farther they get away from.
Well, his
source
claim that this
material.
will be the most authentic video game adaptation ever, like he said that,
Exactly.
which is pretty bold. Yeah.
Like I think he gets that. He gets like people's typical concerns when shows and movies are made off games. So hopefully it lives up to that. I'm super excited for that show. Like, oh, it's then more so after what how Neil described it at Summer Game Fest too. For Factions, I feel, this is my speculation, is they handcuffed themselves a little bit here because we first found out that this was happening a long time ago, before, like a year before The Last of Us Part 2 came out, somewhere in that range.
It was part of the Last of Us Part 2 leak, that big leak.
Yeah.
That came out. Yeah.
So it was a part of a leak then. Okay, so it might not be self-inflicted, but they eventually had to, before The Last of Us Part 2 came out, they had to say, yeah, the multiplayer's not coming with this because, it's big and it can't be a part of this. It's not ready, right? But now we know it's out there. We know they're working on it, and so now we're constantly wondering for updates on that. And so I feel like they felt compelled to give an update on that at this show because, well, that's what we're wondering, right? But they just didn't really have anything to tell us a couple details that it's big, and it's going to be its own game, and there'll be story with it too. But like to just show one piece of concept art, I don't know. I feel like they didn't even want to do this, but they felt like they had to just talk about it, just to give an update, because I don't know. I want to see it. Like I want to see it. I don't want to see it one piece of concept art at a show like this. It's like, don't even like tweet that. I don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter that much because the remake was kind of, I don't know, the big piece here, and it looks incredible. Like I think from what we saw, even though it wasn't very much either, they justified its existence. I think because that was the question. Like they just remastered it on PS4 a couple years ago, so like how, just do we really need this? And yeah, it's a little bit self-indulgent because they're like, well, it's The Last of Us. This is the greatest game of all time, so we can remake it every 5 years if we want. And people, you know what I mean? So I think there's a little bit of that, but it does look really good. I feel like they really put in the work to make it look better. But it shouldn't cost $70. It just shouldn't. I don't care. It just shouldn't. I was hoping that maybe, it would be $70 if it came with the new multiplayer mode kind of a thing.
Or at least pack in Last of Us Part 2.
Something, right? But not only, they don't even have, at launch, The Last of Us 1 did have multiplayer, right? And it was great.
Yeah.
And so this remake is now more than the original game and without the multiplayer. huh? I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way. I'm not into it. So I'm personally, I'm biting the bullet, and I'm not gonna buy this game until it's on sale for like $50 or whatever. I certainly will, because I do want to play it. But I feel like I can certainly wait if it's, because it strictly is a visual upgrade, right? They didn't really mention any gameplay changes, so kind of weird too. But whatever. I'm I'm feeling pretty salty that they're charging $70 for it.
Out of principle, I ain't buying it either.
Yeah.
What I did want to say though is with factions, I think the one thing people maybe aren't bringing up, and obviously I have faith in Naughty Dog. They're world class developers. I do have one worry, and that's that we've seen over the last year and a half all these reports about PlayStation committing to releasing more games as service games. They've bought some studios.
Yep.
I think the reason this game expanded is because it went from a traditional Last of Us multiplayer type experience to more of a games as service.
Yep.
And it's a weird thing because like part of me is like, well, if anybody's gonna nail games as service, I do have faith in Naughty Dog being the person to do it. But at the same time, it's like, what's the one game that could ruin their track record, a games as service title? You know what I mean? It's like the 50-50, two sides of the coin there, where I have all the faith in the world that they could nail that genre, but also if there's a genre that could put a big knock in their bow, it's probably this genre. So that's where I'm a little bit.
It could be their Fallout 76, right? Where, oof, that's rough. We're gonna have to recover from that, and
yeah,
we're still Naughty Dog, but this might not work out. But it also could work out. But I feel like it's so hard for a games as service game to like be reviewed critically really well. That almost never happens. Usually, like,
well, just like we never see first person shooters win Game of the Year. It's just like some genres aren't set up to be critically acclaimed.
Yeah, and so I wonder. I'm really curious how it's gonna go. But I think you're probably right, because like it's not just gonna be factions, like a couple multiplayer modes where you're 4v4 or whatever, different things like a competitive playlist, like that kind of thing. It's gotta be substantial the way that they've talked about it. I think the setting should be cool though, like having it in San Francisco.
Oh, for sure.
Should be neat. But yeah, I think you're probably onto something with games as a service and like a continual thing that they want to do.
My other worry is Druckmann clearly removing himself from this of like, I'm working on a project and somebody else is working on this. And not to say that Druckmann is the only person at Naughty Dog that can lead a team and make it successful, but I would have the most confidence in him leading it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little worrisome too. And yeah, for them working on it for so long and we only see concept art is really weird. Really weird.
Yeah. I don't know. The whole thing was
and maybe that's part of them being afraid to show it at all too when they want the highlight to be on the remake. I don't know. Very weird.
Yeah. It was just the whole thing just was like it's a tinge of underwhelming. Like I don't know. I wanted more out of all that, and it just kind of came out like bleh. Even though the game itself looks so good, the remake.
Who's to say, because that Last of Us Part 1 stuff leaked really early in the day, who's to say if maybe Naughty Dog didn't throw Jeff a bone and like, okay, we have this concept art we can provide for the presentation and maybe it. No, I don't think the show thing was last minute, but I do think the multiplayer thing could have been thrown in there in the 9th hour of like, yeah, we can talk about our multiplayer project, but we only have a piece of concept art we can show. And Jeff's like, that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like one of those type of things. I don't even know if Neil Druckmann would have wanted to talk about him working on the next project either. That might have been like a lot of it seemed like favors for Jeff in a way. You know what I mean? Which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but it didn't seem like a true like Naughty Dog. Oh, here's all of this stuff. Because very rarely, when's the last time they just came out and like teased the game with a piece of concept art? We usually, at the very least, get like a tone trailer that maybe not show characters, but like you get the music, you get like some imagery, some environmental storytelling, then you get like a Firefly sign or like for this to just be a piece of concept art is very weird. Very odd.
Anyway,
what's your next one?
So there was also a game called Wyche, which
re-reveal, yep.
Yeah, I don't know the whole deal on it, but the gameplay looked pretty cool. It kind of looked like a Destiny meets Dishonored kind of a thing almost. So
from the team that developed Bulletstorm.
Okay. But yeah, it was first person shooter, but also with some types of, I don't know, magic things going on in the offhand, and the setting looked really cool. It was very, I'm not even sure how to describe it. I want to say like steampunkish things going on. I don't even know. It just was pretty unique, and the gameplay looked like tight and fun, and that's why I think of Destiny with it. So I want to see more about it still. There might be more details that I just haven't read a blog post about yet, but that trailer, that gameplay that was in this show looked pretty cool, and I was interested in it. So
It looked like very arcadey, combo-driven, first-person like combat.
mm-hmm.
Honestly, it really felt like Metal Hellsing without the rhythm part of it. It kind of moved the same way. It seems like if you
Yeah.
control both those games, they kind of move the same way in a good way. It looks fun. I do think they need to show off a little bit more of the narrative of the game, because it was a little weird of like, oh, you're staring at this portal, you're killing some demons, like what's the hook here? But it did look cool. A good re-reveal for a game we saw a while back and then kind of went dark.
I didn't know that was revealed earlier either. Goodness.
Yeah, it was there was no shooting in the initial trailer. It was like somebody walking through like an old cathedral, and it was in black and white. It was maybe like 2 or 3 years ago at a Game Awards. This is the first time we've seen it in a while. My last one for Summer Game Fest is the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 extensive gameplay demo of the opening mission. I mean, say what you will about Call of Duty, but like their games are always high quality. The last high reviewed Call of Duty was the Modern Warfare reimagining. This is probably going to fall in line with that. What we do know about this game is it's also going to be the only Call of Duty for the next 2 years, which is kind of crazy if rumors are to be true about there not being a Call of Duty next year. This looked incredible. These demos always look incredible. Call of Duty, one of the craziest things that really says people know how high quality your game is you can watch one of these gameplay demos, Dom, and they shoot the gun and you know what the feedback on shooting that gun feels like. Just because Call of Duty is so unique with that, and you know exactly how it feels shooting those weapons. The dynamic physics were really cool that they talked about, where you're on this ship in like this hurricane, and the water is dynamically moving the boat, which then dynamically moves the cover that you're going through. So it can shift, and you're left open to get shot, or enemies are left open to get shot. So it really adds this like dynamic element to the mission structure. So, the mission isn't going to change drastically every time you replay it, but your experience might be slightly different than somebody else, or even your second time through it. It looked really good. It's still in a weird moral place for me with Activision to get excited for their games in some places, but I am a Modern Warfare guy. I loved the reimagining, the narrative of it. I'm probably going to end up getting this to play through that as well. It just really showed really well.
Yeah, I've been pretty checked out on Call of Duty the last few years, even more than usual. But I'll be curious to see I'm really curious to see what they do after this. Like you mentioned, skipping a year. Be curious, and then as they get pushed under Microsoft and things, I'll be curious to see what might change with that franchise going forward. But glad this showed well.
Yeah. How many more do you have for Summer Game Fest?
I'll only mention one more thing quick, which they had a launch trailer for The Quarry, which since that trailer was revealed, the game also released, and I've already played through it once. So it's kind of a weird thing that doesn't usually happen. I mean, sometimes there's shadow drops or things like that, but the trailer is cool. The game was cool. I can even tell you all about it at this point. Well, I mean, at least on some of the endings I got, but yeah.
I'm still waiting to play it. I probably won't be able to get it this month, budgetary reasons, but I want to at least play it before Halloween. So, and then hopefully it's sooner than that. And then eventually I want us to do a spoiler cast talking about it, because I know how much you enjoy these types of games.
I will say 2K published this game, and even on Xbox, you can't get an upgrade to the Series X version for free. They explicitly charge, the extra $10. So I think it's one of only, I don't know, 2 or 3 Series X games that are like that. And obviously it's the same on PlayStation. But they really enforced that, and did so without even explaining the differences between the versions. So that was frustrating.
Good for me to know now.
Yeah, so keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
It might not be my assumption is like the difference between the versions is going to be very minimal. Maybe it's like a higher resolution and that's it. Because there's PlayStation, there isn't really like video settings or anything like that. So I don't know whatever. But the game is still really cool.
So that's actually a good place to end with Summer Game Fest, because the game I'm going to talk about first for Xbox, it has a connection to the Quarry, and that's High on Life. You might be wondering, how do these two games have a connection? I found out today. Did you see this news story, Tom, about these two games?
No.
The Quarry and High on Life were originally first-party Google Stadia games. Google Stadia was funding these games, and then Google trimmed all of the funding for Google Stadia, and these two games had to find new publishers. The Quarry went to 2K, and I forget who's publishing High on Life. But yeah, there were originally two first-party Stadia games, which is wild.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
So, High on Life. This is from Squanch Games, who made Trover Saves the Universe. This is probably my favorite game of the entire Xbox Bethesda showcase. I'm a huge Rick and Morty fan. I love Justin Roiland. I love his sense of humor. I was always interested in playing Trover Saves the Universe, which is a VR game. Then they made a non-VR version. I did not expect this game to show up. B, I did not expect this game to come out this year, so that was a surprise. The concept of it is that obviously it's very much Rick and Morty humor. You play as a human who uses alien guns, which each of the guns are characters and they're voiced by different people. And aliens basically come to Earth and they basically smoke humans as if they're drugs. So you're trying to stop this drug cartel that basically traffics humans as actual living drugs. It's wacky, it's insane. If you know Rick and Morty or anything Justin Roiland, it's very much that sense of humor. It's coming out this October, which is awesome. Launching an Xbox Game Pass, which is even cooler. I cannot wait for this game. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, this one I've not seen a single episode of Rick and Morty. Not even hardly a clip. So I think maybe I need to like give this game a little closer look. Because at first glance I was like, well, that's just a little too weird for me, but maybe there's some maybe I need to like give it a better chance. But yeah, certainly different.
Yeah, and I think this year we had a conversation talking about funny games and how come there's not many more like comedic video games, right?
Yeah, talking about Psychonauts and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And if anybody's going to deliver, hopefully it's Squanch Games. And yeah, I was super surprised it showed up. Wasn't expecting this, and really enjoyed it. What's your first one?
So I want to start with I'm sure we'll get to Starfield, but I want to instead start with
Let's
Redfall.
do Starfield last, since it's on both our lists. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I do want to talk about Redfall though, because
my list too.
I mean, I was like, oh shit, this looks even better than I kind of hoped, because I had this concern for one that this was going to be kind of a multiplayer only cooperative sort of game, right? Like one of those asynchronous games.
Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood or
yeah, even like one of those. But even in the trailer they showed, it emphasized like, yeah, play alone, and it looked like the gameplay kind of reflected that to me. It didn't look like a Left 4 Dead where it's highly dependent upon other people. Probably
there's 30 enemies on the screen, right? Regardless if you're by yourself or people. Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, it looked a lot like Deathloop, actually. If you're playing Deathloop, super fast paced, shooting everyone, not taking the stealthy route, right? And that was kind of what got me the most interested and why I was so into it, was because playing Deathloop, I felt more incentivized to play stealthy and kind of go slow and be creative and do different stuff. Only like in some moments that when shit hits the fan, that like I'm jumping around and using abilities and throwing people, but it always felt like similar to Dishonored, where like it felt a little bit bad to do that, to like play overly aggressive in Deathloop and Dishonored, and obviously both Arcane games too. But in this, it kind of feels like that's the design, is just that, like you're just running around like a madman, just killing these crazy vampires, and it's like fast and colorful, and I don't know, everything about it just kind of, I was just super into. I was like, dang, this looks sick. Like, I'm excited for this now, much more than before. Because like I said before, I was a little hesitant. So I've seen some people kind of like not as impressed with it, and I'm like, I don't.
Oh,
You
there
missed
was
me with
plenty of
that.
that about the Xbox show. We'll get to that later at Starfield
All
too.
right.
It's just
Yeah, I thought
I don't know.
Redfall
Do
looked
you even
great.
like video games anymore at this point? The cool thing too is they revealed the character classes, which we kind of had a small understanding of, but seeing like, oh, okay, there's the
Mhm.
sniper, there's the engineer, there's
Yeah.
the magic user. What was it? The intellect with student debt or something like that was their subtitle. It was really something like that. It was really funny. Yeah, I do like that. It definitely feels like a game you can play by yourself, but they also incentivize teamwork of the girls' elevator where you can like help your teammate get to a second level. But even single player, you could use that for yourself to get up to a place in stealth way. Um, Speaking of Redfall, it was kind of weird that Deathloop wasn't here. We know it's coming out this fall
Oh
for
yeah.
Xbox Game Pass, but like
Mm.
I wonder if part of the exclusive deal is that they can't market it until it's actually available for it. You know what I mean?
Maybe
Which is
that
kind of weird.
that's really cutting you off at the kneecaps. All right.
I mean, we've seen how it's worked with Final Fantasy, which we won't talk about today, but like that whole thing of like Crisis Core coming to Xbox, but not the remake. It doesn't make any damn sense. Um, I'll go next since we both had Starfield. You know, we're sitting here wondering when are we going to get to the trailer for Playdead's next astronaut game? I haven't seen that forever. When is that appearing? Somerville, that's supposed to come out this year. When is that launching? It's supposed to be launching on Xbox Game Pass. Haven't seen that in a bit. And then out of nowhere, we get a new puzzle adventure game from Jeb Carlson, who is the lead gameplay designer for both Inside and Limbo, coming to Xbox Game Pass next year. Cocoon. This game looked so cool. I love the gameplay aesthetic of you put down this orb and then you go into the orb. It's like very meta and like perspective shifting. Even when they pulled out for the title of the game, they did the same thing where they pulled out of one orb into another, into another. It's very much a more of a puzzle game than Limbo and Inside even were. I love the aesthetic. I love the sound design in this game. Like you could very much hear the glass like shards and the metal and these like plates that look like computer processors that you were standing on. The pathing that you have to create with this little object. And then they did a good job of highlighting the different uses of the sphere that you're holding. Like first off, okay, you're just carrying it and creating paths and you're using it to open new pathways. It's like how interesting is that going to be for a 6 to 8 hour game? And then they show you using it to fly or using it to pull objects. And it seems like obviously since this person Carlson was the lead gameplay designer for Inside and Limbo, they know what they're doing, and I'm very confident that this game will build on its own gameplay systems and mechanics and deliver something that's super enjoyable throughout. And I hope it's as weird and um, personal as both Inside and Limbo were. And I'm super excited for it. And like I said, it joins Somerville and Playdead's next game is that little cluster of Playdead developers that are creating some dope indies I can't wait to play.
Yeah, this one looked really unique and cool too. I left it off my list just because I still have to play Inside, and so some of these types of games I just haven't fully gotten into yet. I think I could appreciate them as much as you are if I finally would just give it the
You
chance.
need
But
to play Inside. And it's only like a 3.5 hour game, man. It's not that long. So good.
yeah, it's on the shame list, but maybe one day. I don't know. But this one I feel like I saw a lot of people super impressed with how it looked um and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's cool to see.
What's your next one?
Uh, I mean, this is an easy one, right? Hollow Knight Silksong. We saw some more of it. It looked really great. It's a good reminder of oh fuck, I have like it's been a couple years now since I played Hollow Knight. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot like just how good it like controls and how it feels and the I don't know the combat, everything about it, the tone and all of it, the art style. It just was like again, we didn't even get a release date, except it should be within the next year. So it would have been cooler if we got the date or something like that, and if it was soonish too, of course. But I was just happy to see some more gameplay from Silksong, and
Well,
now we know it's got to be real close. It's got to be. So
my prediction is that we're going to see it at that rumored Nintendo Direct later this month. And I
yeah,
think maybe Nintendo has the exclusive on the release date, and Xbox is like, can we get a trailer? And they're like, sure, but you can't release the release date. And Xbox like, okay, I guess fine, because having it at your show is better than not having it at your show. So
Yeah,
it's not on
seems to
my
make
list
sense.
because no release date, but it's imminent. So
Yeah.
is your last one Starfield, or do you have another one?
I wanted to also shout out Pentiment, which I feel like you've had your eye on for a while now before it was ever announced. Just keeping tabs on Obsidian, and as much as we've talked about it, I really didn't expect it to look the way it looks, right? Because it's
It looks
pretty,
like an old English painting. Yeah, like a
yeah.
Renaissance painting. Yeah.
And so that actually had me like, oh shit, like, huh, this could be really cool. So I'm still a little hesitant. Like, I don't know if this is my type of game, but the way it looks and who's making it, right? I want to say his name was something Sawyer from Obsidian,
Josh Sawyer.
who did a lot of the New Vegas work, right? So,
He executive director or producer of New Vegas and another game. It's not a Fallout game, but yeah.
but yeah, it was cool to see this because yeah, we had talked about it a bunch this past year. I feel so it's cool to see it, and I'm kind of interested. We'll see, and it's this year. That's coming soon. Pretty confident.
November of this year, yeah.
Yeah,
One thing I'll say is that this game, if it wasn't on Game Pass, I'd have a hard time committing to playing it because of. It's not that I don't like the art style, but it's a risk.
yeah, exactly.
But because it's launching in a Game Pass, I'm downloading it day one and I'm trying it because of the pedigree of the people making it, both Obsidian and Josh Sawyer, and also it doesn't look like anything I've ever played before, which is something I'm totally down for. Not on my list either, but super excited about it. And yeah, I think the art style was shocking to everyone because no one expected it to look like that.
Yeah,
And there was an interview he did where he talked about he wanted to make an RPG that was both historical, educational, and entertaining. And to me, that's fascinating because I don't think anybody goes into a game looking to make it both educational and historical. Oftentimes when games are historical, it's historical fiction a lot of times. So
like
I'm very curious to see how this plays out. Yeah. My last one before we talk about Starfield is I just called it the Japan block. So this is both Kojima announcing his partnership with Xbox Game Studios, leveraging the cloud technology, which he specifically talked about. The other part of it saying it's going to be a while, so don't hold your breath. And then PlayStation 3 Portable, PlayStation 4 Golden, PlayStation 5. I kept saying PlayStation.
Yeah.
Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Golden, Persona 5 Royal coming to Xbox Game Pass. It's finally happening. Persona 5 Royal, October 21st. That's when I'm playing Persona. I cannot wait. People were like, Persona's never coming to Xbox. People couldn't even imagine Persona 4 Golden or Persona 3 Portable coming. They were just like, the question was about Royal, right? Persona 5 Royal. So the fact that all three of them are coming is great. They're also coming to PlayStation, and there's some hints of that Royal's coming to Switch as well. But the fact that they're coming to Xbox is dope. It continues the legacy of Phil Spencer having these Japanese studios come over to Xbox. We got that with Monster Hunter, with Monster Hunter World. We got that with the Yakuza series, with Kingdom Hearts. Dope. So dope.
This was just cool.
Yeah.
It was a cool surprise, and I like that it's all three of those games. It felt like, well, that's not we. Obviously, like 5 Royal was the one they really wanted to get for sure, but they're like, no, we should get the previous 2 games too. Like, why not? Let's go all out, just like they did with like Yakuza, like you mentioned, and some other Japanese franchises. So I'm so happy that more people will get to play Persona 5 Royal. It's so good, and more people will. Not only is it obviously coming to a new platform where lots of people are, but it's coming to Game Pass where a lot of people will try it who likely would not have otherwise. Because it's more of a different genre than probably a lot of Xbox players are used to, right?
I mean, there are a lot of Xbox players that are weebs and are yearning for these Japanese titles. They just never had access to them, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully they show up in the droves that you'd anticipate. And honestly, I think with them all launching in Game Pass, I think the moment that the Persona 5 Royal comes out and Phil has tangible numbers behind it, I think I'm more confident that Persona 6 could be a multi-platform release than I ever have been. I'm not saying that's 100% certain because PlayStation could totally just pay for the exclusives. But I think there comes a breaking point for Atlas, who isn't a ginormous publisher, that they're like, why would we they're basically gonna balance the numbers and say the money we get from PlayStation to be exclusive, is it worth not releasing on Xbox? And with Xbox now, they're gonna have hard numbers. Phil Spencer's gonna be like, yo, you can anticipate this type of stuff for your sales on Xbox, So I do think they actually have a doorway into those conversations now with this announcement, which is also dope.
But then, I don't know how they don't put this out on Switch too. How do you not put this on the Switch? Switch is what, like, outpacing PS4 in sales or something like that?
I think
there's so many of them.
I wonder if it's a performance thing and not I wonder if the work needed to put it, but wasn't Persona 5 a PS4 game? PS3
It was
game?
a PS3 game, so it would
no excuses
it would shock
then.
me if that was the problem.
But that's the thing, though, is it might get the PS3 port and not the PS4 port,
It's the same. Yeah. I've looked into this.
Okay. So graphically, it's not much better?
Yeah, and it's very simplistic graphically, too.
Very stylized, too, and they're not going for realism, so, yeah.
It's stylized, but, yeah, there's not ever, like, a ton going. It's not a giant world, Now, 6, when that comes out, who knows what that'll look like, right? That might be too hard to advance for the Switch or something. But for these 3 games, like, there's so much money they're leaving on the table. People would buy it again who played it on PlayStation and Xbox. You know what I mean? So, in addition to all the other people.
And if there's any fan base that is okay with spending $60 on a game they've already bought 6 times, it's Nintendo fans. So,
right. Yeah. You don't even have to discount it. It's like 60. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's get to the game the internet hates, Starfield. So, this announcement I thought was great. I loved the gameplay reveal. We've just gone to a place now with Bethesda and Todd Howard where the internet just loves to shit on them. And it's kind of irritating at this point. People make fun of Todd Howard's jacket and his shoes and the way he announces things. And everyone's so jaded about Bethesda Game Studios and how could they ever compete? This looks like a PS2 game. All of the hyperbolic, nonsensical bullshit. People saying, this looks like a Bethesda game. No shit, it's a Bethesda game. The whole thing is super irritating, and I don't want to maybe harp on all the negative stuff because the internet's done enough of it. And, I think the thing, too, we see this a lot in today's day and age where if somebody were to hear me talking about this, somebody who's in that community's response would be, so we can't criticize games now? We can't criticize your favorite games? Your games are above criticism? It's like, there's a difference between, like, criticism and just shitting on something to shit on something, And that happens far too often these days. Take the Star Wars community, It just happens far too often. And me and you, I know, are huge fans of Bethesda, and we're not without criticisms. Like, it's not we're flying over the moon for Fallout 76 or even flying over the moon for Fallout 4, but we're not also going to sit here and say that Bethesda aren't some of the best RPG developers in the world, or like they're incapable of making a great game. Like, you know what I mean? It's just ridiculous and annoying. I don't know if you have anything to add there. If you want me to start with all the positive stuff, and we can talk about the game actually.
No, yeah, I agree with you. It's usually pretty easy to tell when someone is giving, what's the word? Genuine. What's the word?
Constructive criticism.
Not even
feedback.
That, but, I'm gonna think. It's like a phrase, earnest or genuine. It's something along those lines. Basically, like, if you're actually doing something from a good place and saying like, oh yeah, this didn't. This part of it, I don't think looked
like altruistic.
Great. No, I'm gonna. It's used in politics a lot. I'm gonna
like good faith.
A good faith, like a good faith argument, basically. That like what you're saying is coming from a place of, actually the shooting looks a little off. I'm not sure about that. Instead of like another crap Bethesda game with shit gameplay, and Todd Howard's jacket, whatever. You know what I mean? It often becomes very easy to tell like the difference between like, okay, you're just actually talking about and critiquing the game in a way that's constructive and not shitty versus someone just effectively you're being a troll at that point when it's something other than that, right? So they usually tell on themselves these days, but I'm with you. But this, I don't know, I think this game looks great. So if you
real quick, I want to say real quick. It was the problem is it was compounded by 2 things. One, it was the response to Fallout 76, which in a lot of parts was justified. I totally get that. But I do think people trusted way more in CD Projekt Red than they ever have Bethesda. and Cyberpunk doing what it did,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that are carry that attitude are like, well, if CD Projekt Red can't deliver on their promises, why should we ever expect Bethesda to?
It's
You know what I mean?
created
It's that type
cynicism.
of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is a bummer. But yeah, I want to get to the positive stuff. You can go ahead. I cut you off. What were you gonna say?
I mean, to me, the first, like, the biggest takeaway I have from the trailer they showed, which was long, tons of gameplay, was you could really feel that this is a world. It's all about what they're trying to show off as a world that they're created, or worlds, right? That's what it reminds me. Like, that was what the best part of Skyrim was. The best part of Oblivion and Fallout 3 and New Vegas and 4 was the world that they create, and like the towns and the places and everything that exists in it. That's what I think they showed off really, really well with this trailer. It just felt like, because it's a new place, obviously a new setting that than Bethesda's done before, so that I think it worked really well with what they were trying to show, and like to me that came across really well. Like, I'm excited to like first show up in that big city that they showed off, New Atlantis or whatever it was, and just kind of like see what's going on in there. And like, yeah, there's certain things like the dogfighting actually I thought was kind of cool, and even like the base building and the ship building, I was like had slight like flashbacks to Fallout 4 where I didn't love base building there so much, but I imagine it'll be better here. The shipbuilding, I think, should be really cool. Getting into like, yeah, as soon as you start to see the shooting, it's like, yeah, it doesn't look great. This isn't Destiny 2. And even looking back to Cyberpunk, one of the best things about that game to me was the shooting actually felt really, really good. So that was one thing I thought it had going for it really well. The melee in that game was trash, but the shooting felt really nice, and like in Starfield, it just didn't quite look up to par. We'll see how it is when it comes out. But I mean, think back to Fallout 4 and Skyrim again. How does the combat in Skyrim compare to other games that came out alongside it? It's just not as good. Like, we had like Kingdoms of Amalur and Dragon's Dogma and other RPGs that came out around the same time, and Dark Souls came out at the same time as Skyrim with much, much better combat, right? Just objectively, I feel. Which is an oxymoron. Anyway, that's not what is going to be the biggest draw to Starfield. I don't think it never has been for these Bethesda games. Is like the tightest, best feeling combat. That's never been the case. I think it'll still be great. I think it'll still be good. I think it'll still be better than serviceable, even, right? So I don't want to dwell on that too much, right? Because like to me, it was like, oof, this just looks like a cool world, and I just want to just be there, and just hang out in these different planets.
It feels immersive. Yeah, like one of the criticisms, which I think was in good faith, but I also think wrong in my opinion, and Jeff Grubb from GamesBeat and now Giant Bomb even talked about this, is people were talking about, and we'll get to the 1,000 Planets thing, but people are like, well, if everything isn't handcrafted, there's going to be slow parts to the game. I don't want to play a game that's slow. And Jeff Grubb was basically like, do you not understand pacing? Like, you're not always going to have action because that doesn't deliver a good experience. Like, if you're looking for that, don't play a RPG. Go play a shooter.
Yeah,
go play
Doom. Yeah.
Like, you just don't understand the game you're getting into. I think part of that too is with the shooting is like, yeah, sure, you put Doom Eternal next to Starfield, and there's going to be a clear difference in the quality of shooting. But the point of Bethesda games aren't the combat necessarily. And I'm not giving them a pass. I'm not saying like, oh, they can be shit and it's okay. Because like to your point, I think it's to be better than serviceable. But that's not the strength of the game. That's not what's going to keep you for 50, 60 hours. Mm-hmm. I made some notes here. So the first pair of notes I made were the improvements specifically for Bethesda Game Studios. So not comparing it to other people, but to themselves. I think the shooting mechanics were improved. Like you said, they're not great, but I think from what we've seen from Bethesda, I think it is an improvement for sure from Fallout games. In my opinion, anyways, I thought it looked improved. The visual fidelity, which they're using a new engine, so that's kind of a given. And then despite the glossy eyes and that one lady having a little bit of a cross eye, I do think the facial animations were fantastic. Especially that one like hermit-looking guy that they talk to later that's standing next to the artifact. I think people too much were like, oh, why are the eyes so glossy, and not seeing how high quality the facial animations were. I thought they were fantastic. I was really surprised because that's a big criticism for Bethesda games too, is like the dead face. And sure, some of the dead eyes are still there to some extent, but I do think the facial animations were really, really good.
Yeah, it's an
Next,
interesting thing. Like I've been viewing it lately as like certain games as they become a series, they kind of like expand into other genres, right? And like
yeah,
where you come from is kind of can be limiting in certain ways, right? So like Bethesda's RPGs come from like a more RPG like roots or whatever, right? Where like the first couple Elder Scrolls games are super stiff and like and all that kind of stuff, but that wasn't even a thought, right? It wasn't about that in the slightest. And so now like it's evolving, it's getting better, but if you compare it to like a Naughty Dog game where it is all about the cinematics and the animations, the facial features and all that stuff and the dialogue and like where how it feels real and people are interacting and all that, um, you know, that's where it comes from. So they might like a Naughty
yeah.
Dog game might branch out into like a bigger RPG, and then you're probably going to see it struggle in some of those things compared to a Bethesda RPG, who like that's where their roots are, and so that's kind of how I view some of that stuff. Like it's sometimes it makes sense to compare that to itself. So Bethesda games to past Bethesda games, in which compare this to Fallout 4, Fallout 76, it looks 1,000 times better. The animations, so much stuff like just looks way better, even if it's not up to par with, Last of Us Part 2, right? Um,
Well, and that's the thing too is I think there's a problem with a certain sect of the gaming community where cinematic storytelling is the only storytelling that there should be, and I like
yeah,
wholeheartedly disagree with that. Like, obviously, playing Red Dead or Last of Us is a very special cinematic experience, but I do get immersed in the storytelling of an RPG like Fallout or even now Starfield. Like, it's different, and it doesn't mean it's lesser than. They're going for different things, and they do, to your point, yeah, have different roots, and even through development, they have different objectives of what they're trying to accomplish.
yeah,
So the other thing, my next line is, I thought the UI looked clean and very sci-fi, which is
mm-hmm.
really good. You know, Bethesda usually nails the UI of their games, so that's not a problem. The crafting system sounded really interesting. I hope it's as deep as they explained it to be, which I would assume it will be. Let me use all those scraps I pick up, put them to good use. The outposts, yeah, like I was higher on the outposts in Fallout 4 than I think a lot of people were. Not that I loved them, but I wasn't against them as many other people were. This seems to be more refined.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think I like the idea of he even mentioned you can hire people to sustain it for you and grow crops and find materials. And I do think that because of what happened with Fallout 76, I wonder if their core philosophy for Starfield was take the stuff we do good and the stuff we do okay and make it all better and work on it. I don't know if this is going to be innovative in terms of things for Bethesda trying different things, but I do think it might be innovative in them taking the things they've done before and making them much better. If that makes sense. And I
Yeah.
wonder if Outpost is one of those things. The jetpack looked cool. Give me a jetpack in any sci-fi game, I'm down. I wonder how that's going to work with upgrading. Like, can you, by crafting stuff and making your jetpack better, do you get, sustained altitude? Can you, like, different stuff like that? I wonder how that's going to work. Even on the UI, there was like an oxygen meter. So I wonder if depending on what planet you land on, that's going to affect how you're able to explore it, which we'll get to the planets
Good
later.
point. Yeah.
And then last up, you can build your own ship, which is really cool. It's modular. I love the way you can do that. I wonder if you can pick set designs for the inside or if it's just the outside of the parts and they're kind of set in their own design. The space dogfights were a surprise. I don't know if anybody saw that coming.
Yeah.
I highly doubt that. They looked fun. You won't be able to travel interplanetary with your ship. That was kind of confirmed from Todd Howard, which I'm fine with. I don't need that. If that, because creating a system like that could take away from other aspects of the game they can work on. I'm totally fine with them not having interplanetary space travel. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, when he explained it, it made sense of that time between, being in space and then landing on the planet was not fun. Basically, there was nothing. It was just kind of felt like wasted time when they tried to design it that way, and so they just kind of cut it out. And that makes sense to me. I trust that judgment, right? I'm not necessarily trying to like have a spaceship landing simulator through the atmosphere or something if it's not going to be fun, right? So I think that
Exactly.
makes sense.
So you talked about New Atlantis. So some planets have major hub cities, but you can't only just land on them. You can land anywhere on the planet. Obviously, the difference being the hub city is very like curated and designed and based on him saying that there's going to be 1,000 planets, a lot of the other stuff is probably going to be procedural where you can get resources and materials. Not saying that there won't be random events on those planets that'll be interesting and engaging and dynamic, but there's going to be a clear difference between the designed stuff and the procedurally generated stuff. This was a huge point of contention with people online of like 1,000 planets. What's the point? That's fine. It's cool. Like, you know, Mass Effect 2 is one of my favorite games of all time. You can't land on all those planets that you can explore in Mass Effect 2. Some of them you just mine. If you're telling me I can land on the planet and just check it out and see if I find any weird aliens and then hop back on my ship, cool. I think that aspect of the game isn't, hey, this is the core experience. Everybody's going to be trying to travel to as many planets. It's, hey, you enjoyed the main campaign of this game and the side activities. Here's some reasons to go and continue to play in this world and have fun. Also, it justifies expansions in the future where they can add stuff too. But I do think it's one of those things where, similar to Elden Ring, the optional bosses are optional. They're there if you're engaging and loving in the game, and you can do as much as you want or as little as you want. You can mainline the game if you want. But there's more content there if you want it. And with this, sure, would I want 20 handcrafted planets that all are immaculately designed? Sure. But if you're going to give me like 5 to 10 planets that are that, and then a bunch of other planets I can just, forgive the language, fuck around on and do whatever, I'm cool with that. I think it's going to add to immersive storytelling with the community where people are like, and that's the other thing. All the planets aren't procedurally generated in terms of you're going to have Blockoid B and I'm going to have Blockoid C. There's 1,000 planets. The stuff on that planet was procedurally generated when they were creating the game. So they're already set in stone. Yeah. So they could have gone in and handcrafted aspects of those planets after they were procedurally generated, but they weren't all handcrafted from the top. And I do think with the community, you're going to hear about, hey, did you go to this planet in this system? Go check it out. There's something cool to discover. And I think that's going to be really cool because it adds a strong community element to the game as well. What do you think about the whole 1,000 planet saga on the internet?
I get why it stood out, because it feels like when you're at a conference and like, oh, we have 1,000 planets, right? It feels like a thing you're trying to like just marketing check off thing of like,
mumbo jumbo, yeah,
that kind of thing, right? Now that being said, the particular response to it was odd at some place, like some of the ones you talked about, where it's like, okay, but if it doesn't work, then if we get the game and like 950 of those planets, frankly that still leaves 50 planets, which is a lot, but anyway, if 990 of those planets are just absolutely barren and nothing happens on them at all,
brown desert planets,
right? If they're all Tatooines, then it's like, okay, so that claim felt now in retrospect feels hollow, and like this isn't what it
but in
pitched,
retrospect,
right?
It's deserved. Like, to have that pessimism going in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. If that ends up being the case, then okay, then it didn't work out. But like, I'm not just going to assume that, oh, it's procedurally generated, they're all empty, it's stupid, it's dumb. Oh, okay. I mean, I guess maybe it could be, but I don't know. I hope not.
Even if 950 of those planets are dumb, if the handcrafted ones are amazing and the main storyline is great, it wouldn't take away from my Starfield experience. All that's ancillary to me. And sure, you can argue, well, they're using it as a marketing point. Sure, games use dumb marketing points all the time, and I'm not going to necessarily give Todd Howard a pass, but that's like secondary to what I want out of Starfield. I think you feel the same way. Like, that's cool if I get to it and I want to explore other planets. I hope they're good, but I'm not going in being like, I don't care about the main storyline. Are these other planets going to be cool? That's not my main priority,
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't getting too hung up on that. Like, I had a little bit of like a twinge of like, oh, okay, 1,000 planets. That's the way he said it felt like, well, at the end of the day, this whole thing is a commercial. So like, yeah, he's trying to sell his game, but yeah, I'm looking for that. It certainly isn't a negative. I don't know how you can maybe be cynical about something like that, but until it's proven that that's not a good thing, I don't know how. Like, anything good that he could say, then you could find a way to be like, yeah, but it won't be like that. It'll be worse. It'll be dumb. Yeah, sure, it could be, but like, yeah, people aren't just gonna like shit talk their own game in their own commercial. So what do you want them to do? Like, as long as
what
he's not
kind of
lying,
life is it to approach
good.
everything in bad faith? Like,
yeah, I guess I don't know. I'm looking forward to Starfield, dude. Bottom line, that's where I'm
Me
at.
too. We're gonna be talking about it a lot in the future, and I can't wait. And I hope it's as early as things are leading. Like a lot of like speculation, Game Pass like small texts and stuff are basically pointing at this probably coming in like February or March. So I hope that's the case. Let's get to these predictions real quick before we close out. We'll talk about what we've been playing next week. Kind of ran a little long talking about all of these stuff. So I'll go through my predictions first. Indie games. I said by the end of June we'll have release dates for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. That's happened. So that's good. And the other two I'm waiting on are Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp. Hopefully that's at that Nintendo Direct. And Somerville. So that one, not wrong yet. 1 for 3. Let's see what happens. The second one I got wrong. Hollow Knight Silksong remains dormant. I told you when I made this prediction, I'm either going to be happy or I'm going to be right. I'm happy, so I'm fine with not getting that.
Bet against your
next
own
up,
team.
exactly. Next up, release date predictions. The Last of Us remake gets revealed, so I get half a point for this one. But I said November 2022. I was just off, so I only get half a point.
Pretty good though. That's good.
Yeah, because who knows? We didn't expect PlayStation to be involved at all. We didn't know. At least Last of Us. Next up, this one still has time. Saints Row and Gotham Knights are both delayed. Who knows? Could still happen. Now the ones that are confirmed to be wrong or right. Summer Game Fest, Dragon Age Dreadwolf Story Cinematic. Nope. Monster Hunter World 2 is revealed, dated for early 2023. Nope. Marvel's Midnight Suns August platform exclusive characters. Nope. Coming out in October. And we saw Spider-Man, but it wasn't PlayStation exclusive. It's just in there, which is dope. And then my Xbox Bethesda predictions. Double Fine announces their next game on original IP. This got hurt by the 12-month caveat. Didn't happen. This one I got half a point. The first half was wrong. At least 2 remakes, remasters. No GoldenEye, which was weird. But the second part I said, and Persona comes to Xbox. Got it. So that's half a point.
Well done.
And then, so I have 1 point total. And the last one, gameplay revealed 4. And I got 3 of the 5 right. I got Redfall, Starfield, Forza Motorsport, no Hellblade 2, and no Avowed. Once we heard the 12-month caveat, I was like, for sure we're not seeing Avowed.
Yeah.
Hellblade 2 was a bit like, I
Maybe.
could have seen that in the next 12 months. But yeah, so I got that one wrong as well. Now yours. Indie game predictions. Star Wars game developed by an indie studio we know. Nope. Not happened yet anyways. There's still time. That Nintendo Direct maybe. Second one, Legend of Zelda game made by non-Nintendo studio. Also possible at that Direct. Release date predictions. Elden Ring DLC releasing in October 2022. Probably not happening for the rest of the month, but hey, still viable. And another one that's still viable for this month, God of War Ragnarok gets dated November 4th, 2022.
Still feel good about that.
There's the rumor that it is coming in November.
Yeah.
So if it's not the 4th, I'm still giving you the full point because November is close enough. Summer Game Fest predictions. BioShock 4 teaser. Nope. Rogue Legacy 2 trailer for all its ports. Nope.
That was
Persona 6.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. Persona 6 reveal. Nope. But we did get Persona this weekend. And Xbox Bethesda predictions. Trailer shown for Fable. Gameplay shown. 12-month caveat. Kind of screwed you there. Obsidian reveals Fallout New Vegas sequel. Different city. 12-month caveat. Screwed you there. Ubisoft Star Wars non-Jedi game. 12-month caveat. Screwed you there as well. So I think our hearts were in the right place. And I don't think our things were off base because we based it on what we knew this time of year was. We didn't expect it to be what it was this year, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to give us too much flack for that. So I'm currently sitting at 1 point total because I got 2 half points, and you're currently sitting at 0. We'll see what happens. It might stay that way. I don't know if we're going to get any of these other things right.
Get one thing right. Come on, Rogue Legacy. Come
on. Yeah, that's it for this week's show. Thank you guys for listening. If you can, please follow us on Twitter individually. I'm at Jerrad Wyche, JerradWyche. Dom is at ObDom Kenobi, but the O is the number 0, not the letter O. Shout out to Kenobi. What a good show. Collectively, you can follow us at Controlled Interest. That's at CTRLINT. On YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you never miss an episode of the podcast. Leave us a comment. Let us know what your favorite announcement was from this week and what you're expecting for next year. Because one thing I didn't mention, Jeff Keighley announced that Summer Game Fest will have both a digital event and an in-person thing to compete with E3 next year. So that's going to be exciting. I wonder if there is going to be, there might be a lot more announcements because these people are competing with one another to get your eyes to it. So I'm excited to see what happens there. What else? Listen to us on your favorite podcast service. Just search us up. Controlled Interest will pop right up. Whatever podcast service you listen to us on, please review the podcast. It helps us out. Hit that 5-star. Hit that plus, however the podcast service you use reviews podcasts. Please help us out. Helps us grow and get more listeners. Other than that, we'll catch you guys next week. See you guys then.